Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear it. I'll certainly acknowledge that, even though I do this kind of work and have these sorts of conversations for a living, that there are definitely vestiges of some of those ideas that I certainly still struggle with. And I might challenge folks in the audience who feel like they have deconstructed all of this to, think about the last time you had a, body negative thought about somebody else, particularly somebody
Mm.
who was gender diverse or in some other way didn't line up with the way you grew up thinking they were supposed to be. Those kinds of things do tend to fade. But I wonder if either of you have any advice you'd like to offer to the audience before we start to wrap up tonight.
Oh, I've got one. I've got one right on the tip of my tongue. I have come to the absolute conviction that if you see a high control theocrat or whoever who is preaching shame when it comes to sex, and they're railing on whatever, whether it's homosexual sex, or whether it's whatever fetish that they are railing about from the pulpit, I have become convinced that in a great many cases, this is what that person secretly wrestles with.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe what they actually desire, right? It's the Ted Haggard thing, Colorado mega pastor. And he preached to how long? Against homosexuals, gays, 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 gays. And what is he caught doing? What kind of liaison is he exposed being in? What kind of photographs are he sending to his parishioner, or whatever you call it? It's gay. And I thought to myself, a lot of it, again, back to repression culture. I think if you see somebody who is essentially trying to tell you who you are and what is and isn't proper, and they start railing and going after a specific sect or group of people or a certain behavior, it may be straight up bigotry, it may be ignorance, there may be other factors, but it also might be possible that the reason they're preaching so vocally to the audience, the congregation, about it is because they're expressing an internal challenge that they might be having. And their way of trying to deal with the shame of those thoughts is to preach against it in this external way. I think it's an interesting social experiment. So if you see somebody, keep your eyes on them in the days, months, years ahead to see perhaps where their journey takes them. It might be very, very telling. So.
Yeah, don't trust anybody who protests a little bit too much. I definitely hear that.
Yeah.
Alice, any kind of personal, individual advice for how folks can start to deconstruct or heal from some of these experiences?
I can. I always try to be careful to speak mostly from my own personal experience here, because I know that
Sure.
everyone's journeys have been and will be very different. But for myself, I think broad speaking advice, then I will make it personal. Broad speaking advice: follow your curiosity, listen to your body. Don't let anyone tell you what you should or shouldn't do with your body, especially as if you are an adult and you do have agency. Don't let yourself be pressured as much as you can. I know it's easy to say and harder to practice, but listen to your body and follow your curiosity. With consent, but from adults. Disclaimers, asterisks. But no, on a personal note, for me, what helped me be in my body, in order to trust my body, I had to learn how to be in my body. And I think Christianity of the evangelical strain does a really good job at helping us dissociate from our body and what our body's communicating to us. Honestly, one of the things that really helped me, and this isn't for everyone, was marijuana. Smoking weed put me into my body. It got me out of my head. And I know for a lot of people can turn their mind on. For me, it was an off button. And again, this is just me sharing my personal experience of what helped me. But that's one thing that helped me get in my body. For other people, it might be doing yoga. For some people, it might be taking a long walk or dancing. Dancing was another way that I learned how to be in my body, and specifically pole dancing, a sensual movement. That was very healing for me to, in a pole dancing class, to explore and let my body move in ways that instinctively it had always wanted to move like. that I was, harshly scolded for and shamed for, from youth group to Girl Scouts. The way my body likes to dance apparently is not okay. And so letting myself move the way my body had always wanted to in a safe environment was a way that I learned how to be in my body and out of my head. I'm very easily mind locked in my own mind. So whatever helps me get out of my mind and into my body is helpful. And then I've said before, go to a sex toy shop. I highly recommend that, because right off the bat, you're going to be around people who are very comfortable with sex, and coming out of a religious background, it's so refreshing and healing in and of itself to be in that type of sex positive environment where like kind of anything goes. I feel like these people have seen and heard it all. And I feel like being around people, sort of like when you're at a health clinic and there's like nothing you can say that phases them. They've seen and heard it all. It's the body we're talking about. I think being around that energy is very daunting and intimidating and embarrassing and awkward at first, but I think it's so helpful to just be around people for whom sex is not such a repressed, stigmatized, taboo sort of thing, where they're there to encourage you and help you find like, what kind of buzz do you like in your vibrator? Do you like a rumble? Do you like a Sonicare toothbrush? Zzz? Do you like, like they're going to ask you very frank questions. You might be like, I don't know what kind of buzz I like. Let yourself find out, like I think that's a very, more often than not, a pretty safe place to try to break down a lot of our mental hangups. Again, for me, it's always been about getting out of my mind and into my body. And that's a very tangible thing that most people have access to, is going to a sex toy shop and like, letting yourself explore, follow your curiosity. Maybe you're going to be into something you never would have thought you'd be into, maybe, I don't know. Like, I think it can be it helps make the journey fun and less, amid all of the other traumatic stuff that we have to sort through. I find sex toys and toys, it's right there in the name. The play element of sex, I think, is really important to return to, especially when you've had an upbringing where it was like a dutiful, procreative obligation, or it was utter just taboo and shame. Like, I think
stop being play.
Yeah, it stopped being play. Find the play in it, and at your own pace, and trust what the signals your body's sending, and learn how to discern the programmed fear and anxiety from the, oh no, this is just like excited apprehension, and that's going to be a very unique discerning thing that I think comes with practice, that only you can really tell what the difference is for you, with time and hopefully with some good therapists and good conversations. I'm sure you, Christy, could probably speak to the best advice on how to discern that. How do you tell if it's fear or just excited apprehension? That's a tricky thing for anyone to answer, and the individual, I think. But I'm sure therapists are really good at helping you prompt that for yourself.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of hinted at it earlier. It has a lot to do with pushing yourself, but pushing yourself gently, right? Like, we're not trying to deadlift our max. We're trying to find that like gentle yogic style stretch. And so I would definitely encourage people tonight to take a lot of that advice. And one piece I maybe want to highlight is the idea of community. When I talk about people being in community regarding their sexuality, I get a lot of really uncomfortable looks. And that's kind of the nature of our society. I'm not saying that you need to be hanging out at a swingers club or, having dinner at a munch every night. But I absolutely think that going into a sex toy store and being around people who are comfortable discussing these things, being able to share about your sex life with a close friend or a family member. I'm not talking about blurting out all of your private details. You definitely don't have to go onto the internet and do a podcast where you talk about butt plugs for an hour and a half every week. But there's value in listening to shows like this one and having sex be something that you can discuss, that you can talk with other human beings about, as a way of just checking in and kind of scratching some of those uncomfortable places.
If I can jump, I know I'd spoken, I'd answer your question with kind of a social experiment, but I wanted to make this last point, if I may. And this relates to sexuality. It relates to your religious belief or lack of, your political position, your value system, your identity, who you are, what you want, how you live. You have no obligation to keep everybody else comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know how many we see families and friends and neighbors and cultures, and they have put together all these punitive sort of these penalties that if you don't line up, if you don't validate us, then you may lose us. And I'm like, well, if you will discard me for being true to myself, you're not really a friend. This is way too conditional for me, and it's certainly too one-sided. And I always encourage people, you know, when it comes to you, the sexual self, your values, your political self, your atheist self, whatever, your secular self, you don't have to keep everybody else comfortable, because I damn sure guarantee you they're not sitting around waiting to see if you're comfortable. Life is too short. Live it on your terms, at your tempo, your temperature, for your reasons, without apology. Your journey belongs to you.